Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today for Wednesday, March 4th. It's Alissa Coram here, and stocks continuing their bounce today, but we've still got some key levels to conquer. Joining me now to discuss is Ed Carson, my colleague, who also has some notable stocks for our radar. Ed?
Yeah, and I'd like to take a look at HCA Healthcare, Sterling Construction, and Micron Technology.
All right, we'll get to those stocks, but first, we want to take a closer look at the major indexes. So here's a look at the NASDAQ composite in today's session, up 1.3% by the close, leading on the day. Meanwhile, the Russell 2000 up about 1.2% on the day. That was followed by the S&P 500's gain of about 0.8%, and some key levels marked here from earlier that I had, Ed. And then we had the Dow up about 0.5% on the day. So encouraging to see that we're not falling apart here just yet after some notable intraday declines in Tuesday's session. To see a follow up on this rebound is encouraging, but we want more progress, right?
Yeah, we want more progress. I mean, it's definitely, look, on Tuesday morning, we were undercutting levels like multi-month lows on all the major indexes. The Russell 2000 was below the 50-day line. It was like not looking good. I mean, it wasn't. Uh, but so it's nice to see this rebalance. But just looking at any of these indexes, I think the NASDAQ is the easiest to look at just because it's a sideways action that's sort of obvious. But all of these indexes are sort of prone to a couple of days up, sometimes a few more, but then a few days down. And it's just hard to get any traction. So it's hard to buy unless you buy right at the lows of these things. And you have to be really, lucky, honestly, to do that. There's a good chance that you'll buy near a top. Like, if the pattern holds, maybe we rally for another day, or maybe we roll over tomorrow. And, on the NASDAQ, we've been having lower highs recently, makes it
Right.
even trickier. But even on something areas where we've had more of a sideways or an upward bias, it's still tough because you buy on strength. There's still that up and down, up and down. You buy at the top and sell at the bottom. Some things will work if you do it. If you're very nimble, some of these things will work, and then you cut the ones that are losing. Some people will have made headway. Like if you bought the chip equipment makers or the memory names back in January, sure.
Right.
But it's just been very hard to make headway. So if you didn't know anything about Iran, nothing's really happened the last couple of days. It wasn't unusual, for that. So
Mhm.
if we see more of this, then if we get above the 50-day line, we keep on doing it. You can gradually get more confident. But just we've been here before, and we
Mhm.
haven't. We need to get out of this cycle,
Right.
this sideways cycle, and really get an uptrend.
So, Ed, speaking of getting into an uptrend, something that our audience asks us all the time when we have choppy markets like this, do we need a follow through day? And what would it take to look like? What do we want to see? How many days do we need? All that good stuff. Give us a status update on follow through day watch.
Yeah, I mean, for here, like, yesterday would have been day one. It would be a pink rally day in my view. And Mike might have said something different on IB Live, but I think, but we closed in the well up in the upper part of the range yesterday. So today would be day two. We usually look
Mhm.
for a fall through day on day four. And the thing is, and this has been a great example of why we wait for that, because yeah, anybody can have a good day or two. It's sort of like I talk about like a basketball game. You're down 20 points. The other team always seems to score a 3-pointer or two. They're still down by a lot. They haven't really changed the dynamic of the game. But if you see that over and over, I mean, if you just wait a few days, if we have a rally that shows itself, certainly it could go more than 4 days. So 4 days, 5 days, 7 days, sometimes it's 12th or beyond. You
Mhm.
look for that day of strong gain on higher a strong gain on higher volume than the prior day on one or more of the major indexes, usually the Nasdaq or S&P, and so that's when we start talking about going into it. But some other indexes, like some parts of the market, you might think, well, you don't need it. You don't necessarily need it. Like you probably might not have thought of that if you were looking at the Russell or the Equal or RSP, which is again what makes it so difficult. There are definitely portions of this market that are working, which is just frustrating. It can be a little back and forth, and especially with the up and down. So it's just been a tricky market because there's enough strength to lure people in,
Right.
uh, but also shake people out.
Mhm. And in addition to looking at these different index charts, I think probably the best way for individual investors to gauge how good of a market is by looking at their portfolios. How are you doing? Have you been making easy money, or has it been tricky for you? And if it is the latter, then perhaps dialing back that exposure and waiting for more of those signals of strength is something to look out for, because that helps when you have the odds in your favor.
Yeah, I mean, look, in any year, there's usually periods that are pretty easy to make money because there's a consistent uptrend, and there's other times that are not. I mean, yeah, there's some years that are just terrible, or some years that are just amazing the whole way through. But most years there's good times and bad. You know,
Mhm,
you go outside when it's sunny, you stay inside when it's rainy, and that's the way to go with things. And so if you want to mess around, do little nibbles here and there, or if you have long-term holdings that are still holding
mhm.
up well. But
Right.
otherwise, for the most part, a lot of cash and just waiting for that time. And
Mhm.
it could happen any moment. It could be in a
Exactly.
couple of days we're really off to the races, or it could be 2 weeks, 2 months, so we don't know.
Right. And in the meantime, we'll be looking for that follow through day and to see if we can get the Nasdaq and the S&P back above that key 50-day line. All right, moving on. Ed, let's add some more color to what we saw out there in today's session. Give me a rundown of some of the notable sectors and themes that you saw.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things out there. Obviously, we looked at RSP, but I think QQQE is is another one that's interesting because that's back above its 50-day line, not by a lot, but that's beating it there because obviously there's been some weakness in some of the mega cap techs and some of the really big techs.
Mhm,
Uh, US, Mag 7, yeah, that's still just it's bouncing, but it's obviously had a lot of issues. USO. That was sort of flat. I mean, you oil really didn't do anything today, but it's still been such a big move. Oil was actually only up 0.1%, but it's been a big surge, so it hasn't come down. GLD, that bounced a little bit, I think, after. But this has been tricky. Even the stuff that you think is safe haven, it jumped on Monday, then tumbled on Tuesday, and back up here. It's like I don't know where is gold going to go in this in the Iran war conflict. I don't
mhm.
know. IGV, that's continuing to bounce, and we're seeing some names in there, but there's still so many of them are beaten down. And arguably, at some point, well, we've had bounces before. There was a nice bounce in November, kind of thing in there. It ran up right up to the 50-day line, and then that turned
Mhm.
out to be a classic shorting opportunity. Something I didn't do, but that's something to watch out for. Is that because there SMH? I think that had a nice bounce, as I recall, for the chip. We'll see because we'll take a look at
Yeah,
Broadcom maybe after the close. But
up 2.1% on the day, not bad.
no, no. So this has been doing pretty well. So that's acting well. ITA, just the aerospace. There's some and a variety of things. Some space stocks, some traditional names. This is one that people should be looking at for sure. And then Bitcoin, IBIT, bounced today, but we'll see. It has a lot of repair, but there were a lot of crypto names, and it's really exciting to see names. Oh, they're up 8%, 9%. It's like
But look at the
there's a reason they got
context.
up that much. There's a
Mhm,
long road back.
mhm. What was driving the strength in crypto today, Ed?
I don't really know. I mean,
Mm.
the dollar was down a little bit, which I guess, that would be, something to look at, but that's not down that much.
Mhm.
Maybe it just felt like a risk on kind of situation. It just felt like there was
Right.
software's bouncing back, so beaten up stuff
Mhm.
was
Right.
there. I don't know if it'll last.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. All right, let's take a look at a couple of stocks, starting with HCA Healthcare, setting up in a little shelf, arguably actionable above a trend line, or, perhaps folks want to wait for it to clear that high around that 550 level, Ed.
Yeah, I would have done it today, and this was our stock of the day, and I think it has a lot of the characteristics. I'm not sure if it meets every final definition of it, but of a 3 weeks tight. And a 3 weeks tight when it's basically here as a shelf, that's actionable as a new buy point. When it gets pretty extended, those are more like add-on buy opportunities. But
Mhm.
the it was very tight action. This was also a closing high, so that's another thing. So again, most people are pretty happy. There's very few people who aren't up on this stock, and that's always a nice thing. That's characteristics of breakouts and other things that usually, hey, are most people happy? They don't want to sell, and that's definitely the case here.
Mhm.
The fundamentals have been pretty strong with this name. The sales growth has been, is slower here, but they've been able to leverage that with some decent fundamentals here along the way. And so this is a place that's a little bit safer, honestly. I mean, medicals tend to be a safer area in choppy markets because
Mm.
people the somebody else is paying for it, honestly, the government or insurance companies. And so that makes it easier. You're not worried about people cutting back as much in
Mhm.
that kind of environment. And HCA has done pretty well here.
Yeah, I feel like you've always been good to point out sort of that defensive growth element of the healthcare space.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go to STRL. This is Sterling Infrastructure. And this building heavy construction group at rank number 18 out of the 197 industry groups that we track. A recent breakout that's holding it. It's a little choppy. The action got a little choppy here, Ed, but it is holding, especially in terms of those weekly closes.
Yeah, so there's reasons to be encouraged, and also there's reasons to be discouraged about this and buys in general. I mean, it broke out there. That might have been probably the best place to do it right there because, uh, but it did break
Still a
out
tough
and it was
hold.
up and down. It had a downside reversal after hitting a record high on earnings, and the earnings seemed pretty good. And but nonetheless, it reversed lower. Yesterday, it went through there, but the market was weak, and that was part of it. Is that the market had a bad couple of days even before all the stuff that happened this week with ups and downs. So that just makes it tough. You think you have things that are going, and then the market can go in there. So it did get back into the buy zone today, or it was right on the edge of that. This is, the heavy construction firms have tended to seem to have held up reasonably well when a lot of other names had bigger drawdowns. It's just been very choppy. It's like, well, where do you get into it? Does make it tough. So,
Mhm. Just looking at
yeah,
group
there's
chart to show you that strength.
yeah, and there are a lot of things. They have a lot of involvement in the AI data center plays.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's very choppy, but it also just shows you how difficult it is to be buying in this environment because it may end up working great and it hasn't broken down. And you look at the weekly action on Sterling, you look at the relative strength line is pretty strong. It's just that, it's like where do you get into a name like this and feel safe because there are downside reversals
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah, I think those early entries, whether it's a trend line, a retake of the 50-day line, some sort of lower buy point before a breakout to all-time highs can be helpful with that risk management and just the holding and the sitting. But even still, if you get two downside reversals off highs, that can be tough to stomach.
It's tough to stomach, and I agree with you. I think in a sideways market, if you are going to play it, early entries are good because you want to get it as soon as possible when things are getting good.
Yeah,
It's not in a normal trend where you might have 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and so buying the
right.
breakout is easier.
Mhm. Okay, and let's move on and take a look at Micron. You mentioned, these data storage, memory type plays that had fantastic runs starting last summer. We're seeing them take a little bit of a pause here and holding up well. So walk us through what you're seeing in Micron.
It rebounded from Tuesday today from the 10-week line. And I think it's today's high. It was probably actionable. Now it cooled back down a little bit because you could buy it off the 10-week line. You could still buy off of that. But I think getting above, and it is above the 400 level, but getting above that, or on a daily, you could even do a shorter term trend line. I think it sort of got above that, especially when it was above the 21-day line. This is you're sort of playing with fire, but these stocks have held up pretty well. They took a break when you sort of like them to. They didn't fall
Mhm.
apart. They're coming down to a key moving average, and so I would think that getting above today's high or getting above the highs like from a couple of days ago, a few days ago would be a place where you could enter if you wanted to play this, if you wanted to hope to try to get a cushion because in 2 weeks they have earnings.
Mm.
So, if you waited to get up to more of a traditional spot, because end of next week, it is slated to have a new base, but then it would only be a couple of days before earnings.
Right.
And this one could definitely move a lot, but all of these names, and this is definitely one very much important. It's one of the best stocks out there, but all of the names that have been running hot in here are all forging new bases after big runs to start the year. So if the market gets going and, a lot of them, and they aren't that expensive because the market is still playing catch up. I think that's part of it is that, again, memory chips, because of AI, it seems like they have demand that's going to be exceeding supply for years to come. Now, that could be wrong, but that seems to be the thesis. And so instead of the huge boom bust that we see with the memory names, there might actually be 3, 4 years of solid growth, and maybe even tremendous growth. That's just always the tricky thing. And so the valuation, it's not just that the earnings will go up, but you might feel it justifies a higher valuation because you don't think it's all going to go away next year. So that's part of the reason why these names have had these enormous runs,
Hmm.
and they still don't seem. I know we don't talk about valuation too much, but they really aren't that pricey from a lot of growth stock perspectives, especially given the growth rates that they're putting up and are expected to keep putting up.
Well said, Ed. Well, speaking of growth rates, let's check out Broadcom earnings after the close. Are the numbers out yet? Are you seeing
They are
anything?
out. They
Okay.
slightly beat views on EPS, and I guess also on revenue. I think that the the revenue growth accelerated again slightly to 29%. So that's nice. Not doing a whole lot. I think their guidance was solid, at least on the revenue side,
Mm,
but it's not moving up there now. And so we'll see. I mean,
yeah.
Nvidia had blowout results, and that didn't help Nvidia's stock. But this will be important. So I'm not seeing any real movement. Not just in Broadcom's just down a little. I'm not seeing really movement in other names like Nvidia or others to speak of right now.
Okay. Any other earnings that are interesting or just Broadcom?
I think that's really the one
Okay.
that's the most interesting one, really.
All right. Well, then we'll leave it there. Say no more. We appreciate it, Ed. Thanks for your time as always.
Thank you, Ali.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. That is it from us for today, but we'll see you in the morning on IBD Live, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details on that. We also have our weekly podcast episode this afternoon. Today is Wednesday. So join Justin at 5 p.m. Eastern, along with David Keller, returning to the show, talking about how to find the leadership in the market. And once again, we'll see you on IBD Live, and then we'll see you back here tomorrow afternoon as well. Have a great day.